Okay, so welcome to our January 2022 HMIS users meeting for the Orange COC and Chapel COC. My name is Andrea Carey, with you as usual, staff at the data center at NCCEH. And we've got a little bit of a jam-packed agenda today, but a lot of it is very short. So I don't want to overwhelm you. I know it's my first day back. So we've got a few updates, kind of quick updates on system performance measures, moving on assistance, and downtime, just some heads up about some things. And then a little bit of a deeper look at the next kind of phase in our federal reporting season. I want to give you a couple tips in our how can we help section, tips about income and resources around changing income, and then also chronic homeless status. And that generated a lot of conversation when we went over the definition, but I want to give you a couple tips on what is in HMIS. And then in terms of what's next, we've got a deadline coming up for any required training to go over that. And I want to get some feedback from y'all on the LMS launch and what would be helpful to put in place for future users of the LMS. This is our first one. All right, and then we can definitely demo or troubleshoot.
Sorry, Andrea, I'm having trouble hearing you. I don't know if anyone else is, or maybe it's just mine. Can you hear me okay? Yeah, Jessica also said the audio is breaking up. I don't know if you want to try joining another way for audio.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry about that. New device. Microphone worked on a different meeting, but maybe not this one. What the joys. And just
Did you find it?
Yeah, we didn't have it plugged in.
Recording in progress.
Oh, me, I got we both.
All right. Hello again. Sorry about that delay. Let's see. Nicole, can I get a sound check? Is this better? Much better for me. I don't know if anyone wants to chime in. Oh, yep. Thanks, Jessica.
Yes, better.
Awesome. Thank you so much for checking that out. Definitely want to do that before we get to these important updates. All right. So we've got some quick updates around some reporting and some resources. Then we want to give you a few tips on how to increase income, where to get those resources, and reminder of the cost of living adjustment for some. And then also look at chronic homeless status in HMIS and how that's impacted. And we've got some deadlines coming up, so want to check that out in our What's Next section. Please let us know what your questions are, what you need troubleshooted for HMIS, and we can dive into those examples at the end. All right, so let's go through system updates. And first off, the system performance measures. So in our kind of alphabet soup of reports, we've talked about several different reports that we're submitting to HUD on behalf of the community, on behalf of, Orange is submitting for all of the providers in the area. And the next one thing that's going to be coming up that you might hear about is our system performance measures. This is data for fiscal year 21, meaning that is from October 1st, 2020 through September 30th of 2021. So it's that federal fiscal year. And so that will be submitted. It does have a look back period, so that data goes back a little bit further, very similar to the LSA. And we might resubmit the previous year's data too, if that's significantly changed. Sometimes, we look at data multiple times, or we get new information from a client, and that can change the results a little bit. The deadline for submission is in February. Y'all have already worked on corrections for this, so that is the good news. We kind of combined that with other corrections in our major client correction period last year in November and October, November. So we, at the data center and COC staff, we're doing some final reviews ahead of this deadline, and we may reach out for some additional corrections. Please reply, but it should be kind of few and far between, some just real spot checks and potential things that come up. So this is happening in the background, and we did want to just give us a little bit of a reminder about what does this mean, what are we measuring. So just a reminder that system performance measures encompass 6 measures, and there are 3 of these that are actually also included in the longitudinal system analysis. So we're kind of, hitting 2 data birds with 1 stone or something like that. But in system performance measures, we've got length of time homeless in programs, and also the self-reported length of time from approximate date homelessness started. Number 2 is returns to homelessness. When we talk about returns, this is really returns after an exit to permanent housing. So we're seeing how did that intervention for permanent housing work. We've also got a measure about just the total number of folks we're identifying in HMIS for project types, increases in income for COC funded projects, first time homeless. So if there's folks that are new in HMIS from 2 years prior, and then also the all important exits and retention of permanent housing. So these are really important. The kind of the top tier metrics for outcome measurements are 1, 2, and 7. That's why they're also included in the LSA. And so we want to just let you know that this is going on in the background. We're working on that, and that this is another report that is contributing to funding, contributing to the way that HUD is measuring need and performance, and that this is, just one of the many ways that your HMIS data matters to the community. Any questions about system performance measures, any one of these in particular? The only other thing, as a little reminder, is that these are also, these 3, 1, 2, and number 7, are also included in your COC performance matrix, which is looked at quarterly by the Performance Review Committee and by the Data and Grants Work Group. So this is info that a lot of eyes are on, and so we really appreciate your help in making sure that's accurate and complete. It's a new resource. We went over moving on assistance as a data element and how to enter that for PSA project last year's meeting. Got a link here for slides that'll be posted. This PowerPoint will be posted to our website right after, but it's also already posted on the OCPEH webpage. So that review of the workflow is ready to go from last month, but we've also added a guide and are adding that to the website. Just also wanted to identify a few resources. You can check out the video for service transactions from our core data entry training, and you can practice yourself through the training site. So just wanted to remind folks that moving on assistance is required for PSH projects for entering, and there's some guidance available for you to do that. Any questions that have come up in the last 4 weeks about moving on assistance? or there hasn't been. Okay, as you turn your focus to that more, do let us know if you have any questions. Okay, last really quick update is this art upgrade. We just want to briefly let you know, give you a heads up, there's big changes coming to ART, which is a really in-depth reporting tool that your agency admins and other program managers have access to in HMIS. They are promising a lot of great things like new analytics and visualization, an easier way to customize it on the back end. And this is all going to be happening around February 1st, estimated by WellSky, our vendor. So we want to let you know there's big things coming. There's no cost to us, and we look forward to seeing those in action. So this is officially kind of the funeral for a tool called Click that we had been talking about for a couple years. So if you remember Click, it has died. It is not going to appear in our system. ART is going to get an upgrade instead. So we're excited about that. Want to let you know there might be some disruption in February, and we'll try to get more details and more specifics as they come. All right. So checking in with the federal reporting season in general, we have been talking about this alphabet soup, and all of these are interconnected. So one of the things that we're doing to support all this reporting is agency check-ins, agency HMIS check-ins. So if you are running a street outreach, emergency shelter, transitional housing, rapid rehousing, or permanent supportive housing project in HMIS, you should have been contacted and asked about this checklist and asked to confirm some information, maybe through a meeting. So if you haven't, please, let us know. And by you, I mean the agency admin. That's the main point of contact for our agencies. But this is part of reporting because this is allowing us to confirm program details that are required for the LSA, for the housing inventory count, for a couple different things. So we really need to confirm this information now in order to both submit the LSA and then prepare for the housing inventory count at the end of the month. Right. And then the other thing that we are looking ahead to is point in time count. So we wanted to do a brief intro for what to expect for point in time count and housing inventory count. Some of you may have participated in different ways with PIT in the past, and for HMIS, it is going to be very similar to last year, but want to make sure that that is clear for everyone and folks are understand your role as we approach the point in time night. So point in time is that one night count, one night census of everyone experiencing homelessness according to HUD's definition. So that is, a narrower population. And so we are counting both folks that are unsheltered and folks that are sheltered. There's those two big categories. For unsheltered folks, Orange is going to be doing your regular unsheltered count. Apologies, this is not in HMIS. And you may be, you're going to be asking about January 26th, but you might be using your service-based counts for the week after. So contact your COC or your other point of contacts for that. I just really want to focus on the HMIS side of the point in time count, HMIS shelter and transitional housing projects. We are going to be using our HMIS reports, and we're going to be, the data center is going to be working with you to finalize that data and submit reports. All of that is going to be about clients staying with you on January 26th And staying with you could mean in your facility or in a hotel room that you're paying for, right? Because that is you providing shelter. So all of that is going to be counted. And then non-HMIS folks, we are also going to do, we're going to be collecting that information from our VSP, our victim service provider, as well. All right, apologies for that typo there. So that's the point in time count, that's the people count. And then what's really more involved is our housing inventory count, which is really looking at the capacity for services and for both sheltered services and permanent housing services. So that is going to be really focusing again on that one night, January 26th, what was available, what beds were available, what was the funding of those beds, the federal funding, as well as the number of people. So we use the people count here in order to calculate utilization. For permanent housing, we have to count the number of folks moved in into those permanent housing resources. So that is going to include our rapid rehousing, permanent supportive housing, and EHVs this year. So if you have one of these projects in HMIS, you're going to be needing to submit reports for those folks. So housing move-in date becomes a really, 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 really important data point for the housing inventory count. All right. So maybe this is a little bit of a better summary for us. The HIT and HIC, the point in time and the housing inventory count, these are looking at one night, right? One night counts for people and beds and units is kind of a way to think about it. But they do overlap a little bit. So what this table is trying to show is just that the people count, the point in time count, includes these kind of three big data sources: unsheltered folks, sheltered folks in emergency shelter and transitional housing, and permanent housing participants in rapid rehousing, permanent supportive housing, and other permanent housing. Excuse me. So we're counting all of those people, and then they're submitted into either the point in time count here, point in time count, or the housing inventory count. So you can just see that especially the sheltered folks in emergency shelter and transitional housing, those folks are counted in both places. All right. Any questions about the different data sources here? I think the data center will be communicating with you specifically about HMIS projects. I think it's important to understand that this is encompassing other parts of the community too. So you might hear about something, you know, from Compass Center about counting folks in a different way. So just I guess a heads up there. Let's narrow down to what your role is. So specifically for program staff of shelters, transitional housing, rapid rehousing, permanent supportive housing projects, we have two big jobs. One, ensure information is complete and entered into HMIS for those clients served on January 26th. And two, to submit reports that include a bunch of information: the client information, program information, funding, beds and units, and submit that information to NCCEH. There's what I would like you to focus on right now is making sure your client information is complete. So run that APR and CAPER for January to make sure that you have complete information for clients. That's everything from, age and name to race, ethnicity, gender, DV status. All of those identifying things and those core experiences need to be complete. And really think about how are you going to enter data collected on Wednesday, January 26th. Are there key folks in your agency, or do you yourselves need to reserve some time to make sure that information is entered into HMIS really quickly, right? Either live or really next day is going to really help your agency as a whole submit this information. So if you can reserve some extra time for data entry and potentially cleanup on or after that night, that's a great thing to do right now. In terms of submitting the reports, we'll be sending out, the specific things to look for, but key things to remember are that the data center runs those reports for agency administrators. Then you as an agency need to review, meaning look at the report, see what's missing, see what may need to be corrected, actually correct that data, and then submit the corrected reports, the accurate reports to NCCEH. Now this weighs a little bit heavier on our agency administrators, so you might want to reserve some additional time to review those reports and submit those reports in the week after point in time count. All right, so a little preview of the timeline and tasks there. Okay, so let's continue with how can we help, some tips here. Any questions so far? I don't think so. All right, so it's the new year, and often this is a great time to think about income. Do we need to update income for our clients in HMIS? We have a training video, I think it's about 10 minutes, and a step-by-step guide for how to update income in different ways. So whether or not someone had income before really changes the way that you enter the data into HMIS. So there is that PDF guide, and this is especially important for our clients that receive Social Security, right? There has been effective this month, January 2022, we have a 5.9% increase for those clients. So this is a great time to both practice recording that income and making sure that that income is accurate for your clients in HMIS. This is, for those COC funded projects, this is included in that performance measure for increasing income. So make sure you're checking with clients that they got this and that you're including that in HMIS. I've also got a link here for more details, and that is the kind of official Social Security Administration site information. Right. Have folks already heard from clients that they have received this increase? Maybe not quite yet. Well, they should be. So definitely keep, if that applies to them, you'll want to make sure that's updated in HMIS. Yeah, so I'm not, sorry, there's a chat question, great question. Should everyone who gets Social Security get this increase? I was not a case manager. This is not my area of expertise. I don't want to misspeak, but my understanding is that if folks are getting SSI or SSDI, they do get this cost of living increase. Nicole, can you fact check me on that?
Yeah, in general, most folks would get it. It's across the board cost of living increase. It wouldn't hurt to confirm, you know, just to make sure that folks got that increase before changing data, and you know, it could be a good conversation to have too. But generally, for folks that are receiving this, if one person gets it, then everyone does. Of course, that you know, if the cost of living increase change is different for Social Security versus SSI versus SSDI, right? Different income types and amounts could change differently. But generally, if there's a cost of living increase for one type of income, it's for everybody that receives that income, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So specifically for SSI, the maximum is now $841. Great. Thanks for fact checking me on that. SSI is the main impact there. We also want to give you some tips around chronic homelessness. We got a lot of questions generated from reviewing this definition in a prior user meeting last year. And we thought it would be helpful to take a look in HMIS, actually look at how can your client be recognized as chronically homeless based on the data that you enter into HMIS. So as a reminder, chronic homelessness has these three component parts: a qualifying disability, you know, according to HUD's definition, that the client is currently in emergency shelter on the streets, and that a client has that experience of homelessness for 12 consecutive months or 4 times over 3 years that equal a year. So that's when they get that chronic homeless status. And in HMIS, this means that there are 3 disability questions that are entered. 3 portions of that disability subassessment must be set to yes, basically, in order for them to be counted as having that qualifying disability. And then there's a few questions in the homeless history section. There's some, you know, conditional logic there. But so many of those homeless history questions impact whether or not someone is considered chronically homeless. So we can take a look in the training site, look to show you just how that actually looks in HMIS. And there are a few things that we're going to be looking for. For disability, we're looking for the gateway question, a specific disability, and if the disability is long-term and indefinite for duration. So there's that follow-up question that's crucial for being counted as for contributing to the chronic homeless definition. And then secondly, for homeless history, there's 3 key questions that apply to everyone. The approximate date homelessness started, that question where you actually put a date in. It's an estimate, but it is a date. That date field contributes to this. The number of times homeless, that question, and the number of months homeless. Each of those can also contribute to the homeless history of the client and whether or not they're counted as chronically homeless. For specific project types, there's 2 other questions that impact it. For street outreach and emergency shelter projects, since they're labeled as that project type, that contributes to whether or not the client is considered currently in shelter or on the streets, right? So the project type is taken into consideration. And then for CE, transitional housing, rapid rehousing, and permanent supportive housing projects, prior living situation and the follow-up questions there are going to be taken into consideration. So just all of homeless history really is used for chronic homelessness in one way or another. So let's take a look at that.
So Anna, can I ask a question?
Yeah, please do. Great for my transition.
Okay, this is Don. I was just asking now on that approximately on the approximately date when it starts. So ask the question, give them the question that when their date started or when we did when we do it, we put that date in there. We do the HMIS. So we're doing it right now. Say if I'm doing you, do we put that date as of today or we ask them when they homeless started?
And I'm sorry, which are you talking about? This approximate
Yes, ma'am. Approximate
date homelessness started. Yeah, yeah. Let's take a look at that so I can just respond in relation to an example here. I'm just going to pretend that I'm Miss Helen Housing entering into a rapid rehousing project, and my client is Hit Caboodle. Okay, so I went through that a little fast, but I am in EDA mode. I went to Client Point to look up my client ID, and now I'm going to take a deep dive into the START assessment to look at the responses for these questions. All right, so if we go, well, let's do homeless history first since you had that question on. So for homeless history, approximate date started is, and I just clicked on that approximate date started field here, and you hover, it's got some support, and then if you click on it, it also has some clarifying questions for how to define this. So approximate date homelessness started is looking at when the client started staying on the streets or in emergency shelter. To put it another way, when did you become homeless this time? So we're assuming that, this question kind of assumes that they are homeless, right? If you're working in a project where homelessness isn't an eligibility requirement, then this would remain blank. But for most of our projects, homelessness is an eligibility requirement. They are homeless. And so when did you become homeless this time is kind of an appropriate question. So that's kind of when you answer the question, are they homeless? And when did you start staying on the streets or in shelter? What we try to do is estimate as best as possible the continuous period of time that they've been homeless before they enter this project. So if my project start date for KIT is 10/5/2016. Wow, okay, I went way back in time. 2016, then we would have the approximate date homelessness started would be sometime before that. Apologies, I misread this date when I was researching this client. So that was August of 2016. So potentially this client was in a place not meant for habitation for a month before, and so I would put in September 1st if they said, September, the beginning of September is when I first became homeless. So seeing these questions, Donald, did I answer your question, or I may have misunderstood?
You asked. Okay, you got it. You answered. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, cool.
I just know we have another one on there, another date that's laid on down in this process. I'll let you know when you get to that part. Okay, let's go ahead. Keep going. I'll get to that.
Yeah, so this is specifically, you know, in the homeless history section, and this would be a date either the same date as our project start date or before project start date. So it wouldn't be in the future, and yeah. And then the other two questions that apply, you know, regardless of your project type, can contribute to chronic homeless status is this number of times the client has been homeless on the streets or in shelter past 3 years, or the number of months. And so this is a numeric answer where we would, you know, say the number of times. Remember that it's 4 times that contributes. If someone doesn't have 12 months continuous, then it's 4 times totaling 12 months or more that would make someone chronically homeless. That would kind of identify them as chronically homeless. All right. The other question for our rapid rehousing, transitional housing, and permit support housing projects is this prior living situation. And so you'll want to follow the prompts here if there are new follow-up questions to help respond to those. So here, if we change jail, prior living situation to jail, then we've got some different follow-up questions, and they're asking how long did they stay there? And if the system is determined, yes, stayed less than 90 days, and then we have to respond, were they on the streets before then? And if they were, then they could potentially be chronically homeless, and we get these other questions to answer again. So homeless history is really kind of the construction of this homeless history series of questions is focused on determining if someone is chronically homeless or not. So that's a really important part to think about for this series of questions. And now if we go to disabling conditions, we said that there were 3 yeses that were needed. The gateway question, the specific disability type, and the if long, continued, and indefinite duration question. So our gateway question is right here, right? It's that if or does the client have a disabling condition, yes or no? So we need a yes here, and then we also need a yes for a specific type of disability, mental health disorder, developmental, physical, whichever. And then we also are going to need, circle this for continuity. Okay, so there's going to have to be a yes there. And then the last part is, does it meet the HUD definition? And to meet the HUD definition, it must be expected to be long continued and indefinite duration and substantially impair the ability to live independently. This right here is language straight from the HUD definition. And so when we go to add a specific type of disabling condition, oh, excuse me, I'm gonna need to clear my drawings. Okay. This is gonna identify whether they have a qualifying disability and what type it is. So if we say alcohol use disorder, we have to confirm that by selecting this type of alcohol use disorder, we're saying yes, there's a yes response here, right? And the last part is, is this long continued or indefinite duration? So if we select that, then it will come up as yes in all 3 places that we needed for chronic homelessness. yes at the top for the gateway question, yes for disability determination, and yes for this follow-up question. All right, and remember, you do want to do your HUD verification. So if the client responded no to the others, I can make sure that these all say no and save and exit, and I get my green check mark there. So critically, in this example, the physical disability type would not be taken into consideration for chronic homelessness because they have a no listed in this follow-up question. But do have alcohol use disorder identified. So they meet that requirement for chronic homelessness. Any questions?
I have a question. So
Please.
wonder if you do have a client that does have an alcohol use disorder, but they don't have any, do they need to have documentation from like a rehab center or something like that showing that they have that?
Great question, Linda. Thank you. So for HMIS purposes, for this data collection and data entry, you do not need documentation for these disabling conditions. Now, you may need documentation for different reasons. You may need documentation for PSH eligibility, right? But specifically for answering these questions, they do not need documentation.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, really good question. And I know that in particular, this word determination, it always seems like that means documentation, right? Like I totally get that. And it's just asking us to confirm for each of these types, is the determination a yes or is it a no, right? Does it meet the definition? Does it not? So that is really important point.
Okay, I have another question also. And if they have any one of these disabling condition, but they don't get Social Security or disability, do we still document that down also too?
Yes, absolutely. So it's no documentation needed and no disability income needed in order for you to select yes for one of these types, right? It's does the client identify this? And I guess the follow-up for that is if someone does have disability income, then you can say yes to one of these types, right? So documentation kind of overrides the client response, but you can definitely just take the client response if that's all that there is. Does that
Okay,
make sense?
yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And Donald,
So-
I think you had a question too.
So now when I say if I hit add, say if I want to add and put this alcohol use disorder in there, do we ask, now I'm back to this date thing. It's now you have all 10-5. Do we put the start date on them when that alcohol use started, or just put the date as all of them got there?
Sorry, I
Okay.
muted myself. Great question. So what does start date mean in this sub-assessment? In this sub-assessment, this type of question, the start date is, this is really just looking at the intake date, right? The project start date. This doesn't mean when were they first diagnosed. The one that kind of helps me think about this is developmental. A developmental disability is, I think, mostly what one is born with, right? And so we wouldn't put the start date as their birthday. So just like that, for these other types, we're going to just confirm that on this day, 10/5/2016, the client has identified an alcohol use disorder.
Golly.
Dolly.
Golly.
Okay.
I've been doing it. So I've been asking the question, when did this start? And I have to go back now and put the start date when I started these, that's what I got confused. I
Now,
was confused there.
I will say that I don't think you need to make a correction, because
Okay.
as long as the date is on or before the project start date, it shouldn't cause a report error, but you can make it easier on yourself and your clients in the future by just noting that the start date is the same as the intake date or the data collection date there. Just because that question came up, I want to point out real quickly that the same thing applies to income. That this date for income doesn't need to be when they started their job. It needs to be like at intake, are you receiving this? Yes or no. And so the date is confirming this date, intake date, data collection date. Great question, and I know that sometimes the wording that HUD gives us does not lead us to clarity. So I'm glad we took a moment to talk about this. Any other questions around disability status or the homeless history in particular here? Okay. Let's go back to our updates then. All right, and what's next? We're going to wrap up here. So, learning management system has launched. We have our new training system. If you haven't already, bookmark this website, and this is going to help us with the tracking of requirements. This is also going to expand our capacity for updated recorded trainings, both updating the ones we have and creating new ones. And we have some gaps that we need to fill. And we are expected to launch the new user trainings later this year. So for right now, we are doing the annual requirements through LMS. So that is, there's 3 courses set up: the Start Here orientation, which just shows you how LMS works, the annual privacy training, and the 2022 data standards quiz. We did do the training for data standards back in September, but we want to make sure and just confirm that like those really stuck. So we will ask you to do a quiz there. Now the deadline for this is January 7th, and this applies to everyone that was a user on November 30th. It's the end of November. We did launch this and sent you an email, should have been December 2nd. So we're just coming up on the end of the 5-week period to complete these trainings. If you are a new user since then, you can, be excited to do this next year, but don't have to worry about it right now. Any questions about this requirement? All right, well, you might ask, what happens if I don't do this? And we're gonna start inactivating licenses next week if you haven't completed your quizzes by the end of this week. So we want you to have access to HMIS. This is a tool that's provided for free from your COC to help you meet your grant requirements and community needs. But we also, this is a requirement from HUD to do this annual training. So we need to get that done. Let us know if you have any trouble logging in. One thing has come up that we thought we wanted to clarify. As you're submitting quizzes, you actually have to submit them 3 times. So if you think about it, it's easy as 1, 2, 3, but you have to click Finish Attempt, Submit All and Finish. It gives you a chance to review your answers. You can see this quiz has 10 questions, and I saved all the responses there. And then you do have to submit once more, Submit All and Finish, when that pop-up appears. So just make sure you're really submitting. You're like totally confident in your quiz results and your you're just extra confirming them, okay? All right. And then if folks have started this process, do you have any feedback? We also do have a survey. You can be anonymous and submit feedback, but if you want to share some now, would love to hear from you. Was there, something that worked well, something that was an obstacle, or something that you think we could maybe improve for future staff onboarding? Have folks been able to log in?
Yes, I've logged in and started a couple of the trainings.
Cool, great.
So you will be available if something go wrong, will you be able to just email you and ask the question? Would that be all right?
You sure can. Yep. Yes, absolutely. Reach out to us at helpdesk HMIS@ncceh.org. And we can definitely help you get that figured out. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. One last thing I'll just give you a heads up about. We're looking for those, completed and passed quizzes. It does sometimes take a day or two for your certificate to generate, but we can still see that you passed the quiz, even if you pass it Friday and you don't have your certificate yet. It'll come, don't worry. It's just auto-generated, and it has to, I don't know, some sort of internet elves need to work with it or something to get the certificate up and ready. So just a heads up on the certificate front. You'll get your shiny certificate, which will be great. But we'll also be able to see you pass those quizzes and met those requirements. All right. Well, just looking ahead, we've been doing those agency check-ins. We're really want to finish those up. We were hoping to finish those in December, but if you haven't done that yet, we want to do that with you. There was a street outreach training, on the 15th. There's a link here to that. That's also on our training page. Your annual privacy and data standards trainings are due Friday, January 7th. And goodness gracious, our user meeting was today, January 3rd, and point in time is January 26th. So stay tuned for more information about PIT-HIC. Key thing that you need to think about for PIT-HIC right now is your information in HMIS, is it up to date? So please make sure that that is happening. All right, and any questions, let us know at our help desk. Okay, is there anything else that folks want to troubleshoot or ask questions about? This is a great open-ended time to do so. All right, well, I don't want to keep you longer than necessary, so I'm going to stop our recording. Thank you all so much for joining us.